Let's talk about Kirakira name. If you're not familiar, Kirakira name is a Japanese term which is referred to names that, well, broadly speaking, are just a bit unique or strange. But more specifically, they're usually used to refer to a name where the kanji chosen for that name have a reading which is kind of unexpected. For instance, in this list of 10 Kirakira name, we can go through a few of them. The one on the top left there is read as Sora, which is sky, and it combines two different characters that both mean sky. The left one is an older one that isn't used anymore. So it's very hard to read, but it does kind of make sense. The second one then combines kokoro and I as kokoa, which is like cocoa, the stuff that you drink. And the third is kind of hard to explain, but the kanji on the left can mean wish and the kanji on the right can mean sky, which they've chosen for Noah for some reason. I don't know the connection, but like, here's a person named that and they seem to have done well. Maybe it was a good choice. And some like number 6 are a bit weirder, right? Like you have 7 sounds and it's read as doremi, as in do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now, to be clear, these are not all names that actually like exist. Some of these are just proposals that people have sent for their names. So that is somebody in office saw it, I guess sent it to a newspaper, but it never got approved. For instance, one that commonly comes up when you talk about Kirakira name is this here, which is read as Naoshika, as in like from the, Ghibli anime. And the reason is Ima is now, right? Now, and then dear, Shika. As far as I can tell, there is literally no one named Naoshika-san using these kanji in Japan. Like you'd think if this name existed, there'd be some article saying like, here's the person, but I can't find it. So whenever we talk about Kirakira name, we have to note that some of these are potentially just like things that people tried to have, and others might just be ones that people made up and have posted on these lists because Kirakira name have become a big topic of conversation for decades now. But minimally, there is no question that Kirakira name do exist. They have been a thing that has increased, people say, since the 90s. There's like a whole book on it, which I haven't read, but I will be buying sometime after I made this video. And lots of explanations out there, such as people saying it's a rise in, wanting individuality in their kid's name. Or just linguistic creativity, and people kind of embracing, as Japanese people learn more vocabulary from places around the world, they might find names they like that aren't Japanese and try to render them in a Japanese system. Hence, cocoa being a combination of heart and love, which is certainly not, offensive or cruel. Unlike, for instance, attempts at naming kids Akuma, which is something that the government, does not allow, but apparently has been attempted. But that's what Kirakira name are. In this video, I also want to talk about where they came from and how long they've kind of been a thing. Now, I don't mean been a thing as in like a strange name. The concept of a strange name is arbitrary. What is strange to one person is not strange to another person. And actually, if you go to the Wikipedia page in Japanese for Kirakira name, they have, I think quite interestingly, but quite appropriately, a large section on just the changes in Japanese names over history, noting something like that I didn't know. The ko ending, which is very, very common in women's names, it's a bit old-fashioned, but very much associated with women these days, actually used to be used for men, including a number of major historical figures. So the phenomenon of like a unique name is not new, but having a name for unique names kind of is. Now, generally speaking, a number of different sites on the internet, including the aforementioned Wikipedia, but others as well, I'm not just going to read a Wikipedia article to you for this video, state that the term Kirakira name appeared in the 2010s as it was used by Japanese media to refer to the phenomenon of kind of unique names, which had been increasing in both use and media attention since the 1990s. Through using Google Books, I was able to find reference to a Kirakira name going back to 2013 in this book here, which, while Google Books can be incorrect, is not incorrect because 2013 is in the name of the book's title. And very interestingly, it's a reference to various IME supports, bragging about ones or encouraging ones that can actually let you do Kirakira name. But 2013, of course, means that Twitter existed at this time as well. So I went on to Twitter and see if I could back up my data. And it turns out that any assertion that Kirakira name started in the 2010s is incorrect because it's very easy to find examples going back to 2009. Indeed, this is backed up by Google Trends as there is a very small but very cute little triangle pointing in November of 2009, which is the same time we're seeing this Twitter data. So I'm not saying that the term was invented in November of 2009, but it could have been. Certainly, that's when the first boom in use happened. So take that, Japanese Wikipedia, and your assertion that moving from 2010, the phrase Kirakira name was invented and used in mass media. It was invented before then. Cite my video. But let's zoom in on this part of the data I just showed, or this part of the book I talked about earlier. Because you see that phrase there, DQN? That is the prior name for Kirakira name. To take a quick step back, DQN, which is pronounced dokyun, not DQN, is a Japanese net slang insult, which has existed for a long time and is still used now, and spawned because of a show called Mokugeki Dokyun, which is kind of like a Japanese Jerry Springer kind of thing. Not exactly, it's a flawed analogy, but basically the show was known for taking people that had been separated for some reason and putting them back together and seeing what happened. And a lot of these people that were separated were seen to be really unclassy, The show hosted a lot of people that looked like delinquents or were seen by the internet as being kind of unintelligent. So DQN, again, Dokyun, started being used on the internet to refer to somebody who lacks class or is thought to be stupid. And the show ran from 1994 to 2002, so the term appeared probably somewhere in that time, although the earliest I can find online is 2002, but I imagine this is just because the early internet is really hard to surf these days. I don't think the end of the show coincided with the beginning of a term based on the show's name. But anyway, the actual first term that was used to refer to people that had kind of Kirakira name was DQN name. Now, there's a difference. Kirakira name is more neutral. A lot of people do complain about Kirakira name. They've become like a source of public controversy, but there are posts by people talking about how they're linguistically creative and they actually kind of appreciate them. But DQN name, because again, it has an insult at the first word, is kind of always negative. Hence why, it wasn't borrowed by Japanese media when they started talking about this phenomenon. And there's no question it precedes Kirakira name as well, as I can find hits going back to 2007 on Twitter, which actually matches the Google Trends, which very interestingly, you compare it to Kirakira name, of course you see the earlier start, but also that it has kind of petered off with Kirakira name now being dominant. But Google actually has a potential instance of DQN name going back to 1997. Now this might not be correct because their date search is completely borked, but this website is claiming it is responding to mail that comes after December of 1997, so this message could have come in late December of 1997, which is within the frame of the show. That said, I couldn't find any other uses, so maybe this is a false hit, but minimally, even off Twitter, I can find uses of DQN name by 2007. Obviously, this cannot happen before Dokyun itself became a thing, so if early 2000 is actually the start of Dokyun, then I probably just showed you a false hit, and mid-2000s is when we would expect DQN name to appear. So if we do a broad timeline then, increased attention in kind of unique names happened in the 1990s. First name for it, which was highly contemptuous, appeared sometime probably in the mid-2000s, and then it was replaced in 2009 or so, especially into the 2010s by mass media, by Kirakira name, as strange names moved from something that was insulted by people on the internet to something that became a topic of mass discussion. As it stands, the backlash to Kirakira name, etc. seems to have increased to the fact that the government is looking to do things to prevent certain variations, and obviously, calling your kid Akuma and stuff like that is something that's out. I'm not a big fan of that. But I find things like, using the character for Moon and reading it as Runa quite clever and creative. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as a child's name. It's nice as far as I can tell. Indeed, as a non-native speaker of Japanese, I can say that all Japanese names, in my opinion, written in kanji are often very, very hard to read. So when Japanese people complain about Kirakira name being hard to read, I have very little sympathy. And indeed, given that at some Japanese restaurants you're expected to write your name in katakana so that your kanji can be read, I imagine that some other Japanese people also have little sympathy. So while I certainly think that there should be some restriction on what you can name your kid, I've decided to join the war against Kirakira name on the side of Kirakira name. Because the fact of the matter is, the only thing that makes a name of note is context. And indeed, there's even a term for the opposite of a Kirakira name, which is a name that used to be popular but is now kind of obscure or odd because no one's using it anymore, and that is Shiwa Shiwa name, or a wrinkly name. I've actually talked about it in an earlier video, but this has been around since at least 2011 or so, perhaps spawned by the discourse around Kirakira name, and just kind of goes to evidence that a weird name, or a name that's not cool, is all kind of arbitrary. So why not have a sparkly name then? If we're all destined to eventually have our names become wrinkly, at least those with Kirakira name will have their day in the sun.